Welcome back to Exquisitely Aligned. I'm Gina Meyer-Vincent, the host and your personal soul shifter, here to help you define and design the future you desire and deserve. The one where essentially you become exactly what's missing in the world. And today I'm excited to introduce you to a woman who has done exactly that. Today I have with me Melissa Kellogg Lueck. Melissa is an entrepreneurial pioneer, creating her business online in 2005, before online coaching businesses were cool. Her style of creating simple, joyful, and profitable businesses and her principles for what she teaches now were born out of tragedy. Living through 9/11 in the New York City area, she's a marketing and business coach and teaches women how to create financial freedom through entrepreneurship. Melissa believes that any woman is capable of creating financial freedom through entrepreneurship. Her mission is to surround female entrepreneurs with community, teaching, coaching, and services they need to create the business and impact they desire. All words that I enjoy, Melissa. She's a podcaster, speaker, coach, women's ice hockey player, mom, wife, and she's coming to us today from Colorado, where she lives. So welcome, Melissa. I am so happy to share this time and the mic with you today. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. So, Melissa.
I'm so glad to be here. This is going to be, going to be fun. I've really been looking forward to it.
Yes. So when I read the part about living through 9/11, I actually, as a New Yorker, was no longer living there, or how should I say, New York native. That's where I was born and raised for more than 2 decades. I actually was not living there at the time. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'll never forget that day because I was sitting at my desk in my quiet house. My husband was working out of the house back then. Now we both have home offices, but he was out of the house, and I was all alone with our 2 cats, and the phone had rang, and it was somebody I did business with. And she said, is your family okay? And I was like, good morning. What's going on? I didn't have on the radio or the television. And so this was my wake-up call to what was going on. And then it just all broke loose. So if you can share with us, because I always think there are pivotal, I can't speak English, moments in our lives that do change, how we see things. I'd love to hear from you how that all unfolded for you, because I know it was not a phone call.
Yeah, it's, I remember that day like it was yesterday, right? Like I could take myself back so easily. Yeah. But at that time, I was working in marketing and sales for an internet software integrator. And I had like the five states around New York as my territory. So I was traveling a lot and in the air a lot, as well as in Manhattan a lot. Yeah. And so I had meetings in lower Manhattan on Monday, and I had meetings scheduled for Wednesday. But on Tuesday, which was 9/11, I happened to be home and had just had a beautiful run down by the water and went home to take a shower and get ready for work, turned on the TV, and of course I saw what was happening. It was after the first plane had hit. And so, obviously we didn't know what was going on. All the cell towers in that area and a lot of the phone connection equipment was on top of the World Trade Center. And so when, the towers went down, so did a lot of communications. So my family couldn't reach me. All the phone lines were jammed. I couldn't, we couldn't get on the internet. Like there was just, it was very isolating, right?
Yes.
And I realized in that moment, in that time, that I lost friends, and I was a recent graduate student. I got my MBA in New York and recently graduated. So a lot of my classmates, I lost a couple, fortunately only a couple of classmates. 31 people from the town I was living in never came home from work that day. And so it was just a really sad and tragic time. But for me, you know, what stood out is like all these people did that day is go to work and didn't come home, you know.
Right. That was the biggest, I mean,
that was their worst offense. They went to work that day.
Exactly.
And so, you know, I was alone and I had no communications. I was alone in my apartment, right? We couldn't get calls in or out, and my family didn't know where I was, and they were all here in Colorado. So for me, the question was, if I go to work tomorrow and I don't come home, is this how I want my life to end? Do I want to be this disconnected? And the answer was no.
Yeah. And I think we have that choice, right? To come to that realization or stay in sadness, sorrow, anger, even, you know, all the emotions that go with such tragic loss, grief, etc. You know, and to come to that revelation, you know, is such a beautiful thing. And oftentimes we need some space to be able to do that. Maybe we need to be able to speak to some, you know, have cell service to get the words out. You know, for me, as you can see, Melissa, I speak with my hands. So my husband once said, the person on the other end of the phone can't see your hands going. This was before, you know, we could do video calls, but you know, for me, I need to move through these emotions. So yeah, that's a huge revelation. I mean, especially at a young age, right? I mean,
I just turned 30, which was a big year for me. I think for change. So I spent that next decade between my 30s and 40 really asking myself and discovering for myself how I could have a life and also be able to pursue a business. And I loved entrepreneurship. I loved the work I was doing, but I didn't love working all the time and not having a full life. It was very unbalanced for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I love that you use the words work and life and unbalanced or imbalanced. And I always feel like there is so much more. Life is just a 4-letter word, but there are so many facets in it, kind of like a diamond, you know, that make us come to life. So if you don't mind, I know this is a very personal question, but what were those, what do you classify as your life? I know now you play ice hockey. I don't know if you always have. I never have. I'm not really very elegant on the ice. Let's say that. So you would not
be elegant on the ice either, honestly. That's why we wear full gear, so you fall down a lot.
I would rather be on my rollerblades or roller skates than the ice, but you would not select me for your team. So what were the things that maybe beforehand you were missing and that you wanted to bring in? And then how did you do that?
Yeah. So at that time, I was early on in my professional career. So working a lot, really just striving, you know, chasing the almighty dollar. And I think some of my friendships, I had some really great friends that I had bonded with in my MBA program. And we didn't get to see each other much. Everyone was traveling and working a lot. And I wanted to get married and have a family. And I had, you know, nothing in the prospect for that. I was dating a lot, but nothing, you know, no good candidates. And
I understand.
Right. And so, and I missed my family. Like all of my family was outside of New York, and I missed being close to them. My parents, my siblings were all very close. And so I felt disconnected from my family as well. And, and my health, I wasn't really that healthy. You know, I wasn't really taking care of my body. And, so there was definitely a lot of places that, you know, I was realizing at that time that this is not how I wanted to live the next 10 years of my life.
That is a statement I hear all the time from, you know, an older gentleman who is looking to retire, a client of mine, to someone in their 40s. I don't want to live the next, one said 10 years the way I did the past. The other one said the 20. I don't want to live my next 20. And I think I've asked a few people that question, you know, not on the show, but just in a one-on-one conversation where they were kind of telling me a couple of things that maybe didn't feel right in their life. And, you know, for me, I think it's tragic when something doesn't feel right in your life, because like you, living through 9/11, I think, you know, my husband's journey with his health and how we nearly lost him with a 2-year-old and a kindergartner in the house. And, you know, it was like, now I look and I'm like, no, that can't be. And I asked someone, you know, would you like to live the next 10 years the way you've lived the past 10? And they were like, you know what? No one's ever asked me that. And I think that's like a really key piece. And I think that you're right. Chasing the dollar or chasing the dream or whatever society tells us is, you know, those check boxes, I like to say, isn't always fulfilling. And it isn't, like you said, as you're running this way towards that, your parents are further away, those siblings you like to laugh with and, you know, eat dinner. I don't know. I'm Italian, so I do like to eat. But
we love to eat too. We're not Italian, but we pretend we are, I think.
So, you know, that time around the dinner table, that time laughing and reconnecting and, you know, that's why when some people say work-life balance, it's like, yeah, there's multiple pieces to that. Like you mentioned, your health, family, relationships, like your friends from the MBA program, you know, and I know for me, those were the key pieces that I felt totally disconnected from as Mark was starting to heal after his kidney and liver transplant. Those were the pieces on a Tuesday morning when the sun was, I chose the sunniest seat I could find while he was getting a test that I wasn't allowed to be in because of the radiation. And so I sat in the sunniest part of the room at Mayo, and I took out a notepad and I just started writing all the things I had given up for about 2 years. And those were the things, healthy meals, you know, like having fun, cooking a healthy meal. When your time is so limited because you're working crazy hours or starting new in your field. Well, I'm assuming you were newer in your field, right? Because you just finished or somewhat just finished your MBA. So so when this revelation came about, sometimes I feel like we have naysayers that come out of the woodwork. They could be just someone at the cash register when you're buying groceries, and then sometimes they could be ourselves. Like, is this really worth it? Or is this really something I can achieve? Did you face anyone who kind of, I don't want to say they were a naysayer, but they kind of alluded to that way of thinking?
For sure. I think I'll call it a delusion now. It wasn't a delusion, but I really believed that I could have it all, right? Yeah. That I could have a great career, be an entrepreneur, like really feed that part of myself and have, you know, a great relationship, even get married, have children, be a mom. And pretty much all of the women in my family were naysayers.
Oh, okay.
Because it's like for my mother's generation and older, they were not allowed to have both, right?
I have goosebumps. Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like
those voices, no, you can't. You can't be a career woman and have healthy children. You can't have a good marriage and have a successful $1 million business. Like those
Mm-hmm.
things aren't possible. They're mutually exclusive.
Right.
But I didn't believe that. I just knew that it could be possible. I don't know where it came from, but I was like,
Well,
I'm an idealist.
I think that we are more alike than I thought. So I am having a lot of
Right.
fun getting to know you better, because I think that sometimes we know it. The way I would describe it, Melissa, is for me, it's like an all knowing. It's like
Mm.
this: with every ounce of my being, I know that I will set out and do whatever it is. And there was one point where my mother said, Gina, I knew you would be able to do that. And I forgot what it was. May have been even like nursing my son, which was something I wasn't really like enthralled with the idea. But when I read the proof of the healthy benefits, I was like, okay, I'm sold.
Yeah.
And I was converted, I guess. And I think that's when she said to me, like, if something is challenging for you, I know you're going to like go for it. Like you're going to get to the other side. But it is true. I think that there are generations that have different beliefs than us. There was a YouTube the kids sent me that, I couldn't stop laughing. I should have earmarked it, but it was showing how different generations answer the phone, how different generations do different things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm such a Gen X. It's not funny. Hello, this is Gina. They're like, yeah, people know who they're calling because it's a cell number, Mom. They're not calling they're not calling an office with 30 people. They're not calling the house. I was like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. But we do have those belief systems around us. Growing up, did you know that you might be faced with, at this point, naysayers coming at you like, no, you can only have this or that? They're each independent. Were you expecting, and were you ready, or did you feel they would have the same awakening as you did after 9/11?
Yeah, I think that any naysayer, well, there's naysayers that I definitely had in my head, right? And then there's the naysayers in my family. And it was more like just the fact that I had moved to New York, not knowing a soul, and, this farm girl from Colorado, and decided to pursue my dream. I had been dreaming and talking about moving to New York since I was a 9-year-old girl. And so that part, I think, was not a surprise for them, but it's really the me going into an MBA program and continuing to pursue a career and an education over pursuing marriage and having children. This whole journey for me was something that was countercultural in my family. So I had observed and heard that my entire life. So at this point in my life, like, I knew that I wasn't really following the script for that the other women in prior generations had followed. So
yeah. No, I love that. I think some of us dance to a different beat and find our way in a different way. So that's wonderful. So then how did you start implementing these desires that you had into your life? Because with work and also in your home life outside of the office.
Yeah. So as a result of after 9/11, I got laid off from my job because it was like the internet crash, the boom was busting. And so I got laid off from work.
Wow.
And I had also decided that I wanted to move back to Colorado to be closer to family. And so 9/11 happened in September. And by the April of 2002, I had moved back to Colorado. So I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
And I moved in with a friend of mine that I actually that had done the same thing, moved from New York to Colorado. Yeah. And she was a couple of months ahead of me, but we were friends, acquaintances in New York, and she needed a roommate and I needed a place to live. So I moved in with her. So we were, two New Yorkers just having fun we moved to Boulder, Colorado, and we moved downtown, got some beach cruiser bikes, and just had a great old time, exploring and being single ladies in Boulder. So, but by November of that year, 2002, I met my now husband, and it's just like, how when you have a desire, and you put it into motion and you just take one step at a time, the breadcrumbs just lead you to manifesting that future that you want. And so it just, I like to say it all happened, but I know I put it into motion, but it all came together.
Yeah, I like to think that, because I've had some conversations with people regarding manifesting or how things come together, but I think it's making those deliberate, intentional decisions like you did to not just talk about going back to Colorado, but to making it happen. I think we have these three divine resources: time, money, and energy. And when we really vote all day long or decide all day long or put the intention of, I'm going to skip that cup of Starbucks coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I wouldn't buy it anyway, but that cup of tea and make it at home because I want to buy an airline ticket, or I want to travel the world, or I want to move back to Colorado, whatever that is, whatever we're desiring. And I love that all unfolded so beautifully. And I think we have to always keep that in mind of, what are we focusing on and how are we going about moving back, finding a wonderful man, planning a wedding. That's incredible. So when did you get married, Melissa?
So I met him in 2002 and we were married in 2006. So we dated for a while.
Yeah.
I ended up after a year and a half of us dating, I moved to be closer to him in Vail. He lived near Vail, Colorado.
Yeah.
So I moved up there, and that's when I started my business because I was doing a lot of freelance things in the local area. And then when I moved up there, I was like, well, I don't want to work. Most career people worked in the resort industry, for Vail resorts and, for the tourism industry. And that really wasn't my jam. So I was like, well, I'll just start my own company then. So I did that.
Of course. Why not? Of course. Yeah. I love it. That is just so beautiful. And I know, so is that the company that I know today, or is that, okay.
Yep. And so that's when I really started my, quote unquote online business, right? Because I had some clients in Vail, but the bulk of my clients were outside of the area. And I would just work with them online, or one client that I had in Boulder, I would, drive down once a month or something and go visit them. And but I worked remotely. And so it was kind of working remote, like it's so normal now, but it wasn't then, right? And people were very astonished that I could, grow a business like this.
Well, what a futurist you are, correct?
Yeah.
Being able to, yes, life has changed so much, hasn't it? Between 9/11 and then COVID. And it's just, I think back and it's, I'm 55 now, which some days is very hard for me to grasp.
Right.
And I think, yes, very much.
I'm 53, so I can relate. It's like, what? How did that happen?
Now, when I was 53, I felt like I was 83 because I was waiting for my hip to be replaced. And the next year at 54, I was waiting for my shoulder to be replaced. But now that I'm pain-free again and footloose and fancy-free again, it is, yes, it is hard to believe. But I look back and I think how growing up, I never thought that either of us would experience the word I never knew, which was pandemic, and then watching, having grown up in New York, watching the World Trade Center just collapse, and life changed so quickly. Nor did I know that I'd lived through my husband having a double organ transplant, because I didn't even know that was a thing. So, it's very enlightening. Sometimes I feel like I lived a million, like a cat living 9 lives, like I'm in life 7 or something. So I have to ask, because I grew up in New York, and of course, hockey was a big deal, but I'd love to know about women's ice hockey. How on earth, when you were 9, did you know that you wanted to do this, or how did this happen?
Yeah, it's funny. I was never a skater. I always loved watching hockey. I used to go to Madison Square Garden and watch Wayne Gretzky play hockey. And I loved the game, and that is a gift from my father. He moved. He was an upstate New Yorker, Buffalo.
Yeah,
huge fan of hockey. And when he moved to Colorado, there was no hockey, so he took up motocross and rode motorcycles. But he gave us the love of watching hockey. So I loved the sport, but I never thought I would ever play it. I mean, girls didn't play hockey when we were in school. It was before Title IX. But when I was living up in the mountains, we had moved to a new town. I had 2 little kids, a 3-year-old and a newborn. And we moved to this new town, and I didn't know how to meet people, because I, before having kids, was just kind of the young professional, would go out and, to the nightlife and hang out. I had a lot of friends, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't have any mom friends and didn't know how to meet people. And my OB nurse, when my son was born, she's like, oh, well, all the women on Sunday nights go up to the rink and play hockey. And the rink was like a half a mile from my house. And then this gal that I met at a barbecue restaurant, I, quote unquote, picked her up. I was, trying to make friends. Right. And I asked her, I was like, what do you guys do for fun around here? And she's like, we all go up to the rink on Sunday nights and play hockey and drink beer. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to play hockey then. And I was 41 years old when I decided to start playing hockey. And my husband thought I was nuts, but I was like, I got to get the heck out of here, right? I have these 2 little kids, and I need some time away from the house. And so that's how I got started with hockey.
I'm sorry to be laughing so hard. I'm just like, I love meeting people like you. I very much, but I would have to say that would be an all-time new one for me. And I think my husband would be like, I'm sorry, I don't think I heard you this time. What did you say? With my loud voice. Wait, what? And I was going to ask you, what did your husband say? Like, wait, what? So I'm glad you told me.
Yeah. He was like, wait, what do you do? Why are you doing that? I'm like, I have to that's the desperation. I had to get out of the house. Right.
Well, my kids were never so close. They're almost 4 years apart. So I can imagine with a 3-year-old and a newborn. But I can't even imagine how tired my body would have been, and then having to lace up my skates and with equipment on and be coordinated. So I'm envisioning myself as the Michelin tire,
Yeah, it's kind of how it is with all the equipment, right? Yeah. But it doesn't hurt when you fall down as much, so.
Oh my gosh, that is so fabulous. So do you still live in that area where you would learn how to play hockey?
We lived in the Vail Valley for about 11 years. And then my husband's work changed, and he needed to be closer to the airport in Denver, because, it's not a real easy drive if you're traveling a lot to go back and forth to the airport from Vail. For those that have been there, they understand. But So we needed to be closer to the airport. And I said, well, having two little kids with him traveling all the time, I was like, well, I want to be closer to my family if that's the situation. Yeah. So we ended up moving back to my hometown, which I hadn't lived in since I left, as a high school graduate 25 years earlier. So, so it's been great. And now all of my siblings now live in the area with their spouses and kids. And so we have a grand old time here.
Yeah. And how old are your children now, Melissa?
So I have a 14-year-old daughter. She's soon to be 15 in a few days, and a 12-year-old son. So
okay, yeah. That's exciting. Yeah. They and those birthdays come up fast, right? It's like, wow, how are you going to be 15 in a few days? That's incredible.
And driving
yes.
Goodness.
I've been through that now twice. So our son is getting ready to graduate college and our daughter graduate high school here in May. So it's quite crazy, 21 and she just turned 18. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Now, do your children play ice hockey? Did they get inspired?
They did when they were younger. They lasted till, I don't know, till about 8 or 10 years old. And then they were like, no, we're out. We don't want to do this anymore. So,
okay.
Which was sad because I really loved being a hockey mom. I coached my son's little, team of 5 to 8 year olds, and it was really fun, but
yeah,
it's not about awesome. Me. So.
And who knows, maybe when they turn 41, they may go back to playing ice hockey. You just never know, right? I always feel like there's a perfect time and place and space for us to do the things that we find. So I love that you were willing to be flexible and try something new, even though I would have been afraid of breaking an arm or a leg or hurting someone else, more appropriately, knocking someone down by accident, not on purpose. So tell me, so we just wrap up a little bit, because I'd like for you to, share a little bit about your work, who you are here to help, et cetera, if you have an offer, and also, being able to do what you do now for these years, like how fulfilling is that when you think back to that moment where you were like, hey, wait, there's this imbalance. So I realize that's 2 questions, but they're kind of intertwined.
Yeah, I love the work that I do now because really it's brought together all of the lessons I've learned throughout my life. And really, I love helping women to build their own businesses and achieve financial freedom through entrepreneurship, and really it's more about seeing that we each have value to offer the world, right? And that there's plenty of people on this planet that are willing to pay you to receive that value. And so I love teaching and coaching and helping women see that also. That's what I've learned over the course of my life and career. I've also learned that you can have it all. You can have a beautiful business and a beautiful life. And so I love teaching that and teaching how to build business very simply and have joy in the process.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, and yes. For those of you who are listening on Apple, you're not seeing me nod my head, clap my hands, but yes, yes, and yes. I agree, and I love that. I think that sometimes people don't realize just how worthy they are of those desires. I believe they deserve them, and they're really, sometimes it's the naysayer in their own head that's pulling them back. Well, I grew up in a house that I'm not sure if I can, whatever that might be. And to your point about the fact that there are, people who value what that person has to offer, the impact they're here to make, whatever the teachings they bring is huge. Yeah. Especially now, like you were saying, right? I think I read 2005 when you started your online business. It feels like yesterday, but I'm realizing now it's almost 20 years.
But I'm still here. So
yes, and thriving in a big way. But right, with the internet, there's so much business to go around. That was an article I was putting together recently about competition, and we just had a podcast episode last week about how some people are constantly looking over the shoulder and how that brings about this imbalance in our life, and sometimes even in our health, where we become uneased and then become diseased, where we're kind of just breaking down because we're constantly looking, what are they doing, trying to keep up. And there's so much to go around. I know that I repel some people by the way I look, by the way I sound, and it's okay. I'd rather, right? Some people are very instantaneously attracted to us, and others are like, yeah, she's not for me. And I actually love that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought that point up. Very, very glad. And all of Melissa's information is here in the show notes. Please reach out to her. You will have as much fun as I have had with her today. And was there anything else you wanted to mention, Melissa, before I pull a card from the deck of cards?
Let's see, that I am always offering classes, have lots of free experiences too. So please feel free to check me out on my website, and let's get to know each other on social media. I love that.
Yes. And that is such a blessing about social media, being able to connect with people and then, learn all the different offerings you have, etc. So I'm going to pull a card now from the Opening to Possibilities deck. Yay. I shuffled them before we started. I'll just do one more time. And then if you don't mind, Melissa, just tell me when to stop. I'll start thumbing through. Tell me which card.
Stop.
Okay. Which card is it?
I don't know. I was looking at the flower one. Well, I guess they both have flowers. The lighter color, the one on, I guess, your left.
One. Yes, there we go. Breathing. Long, slow breathing brings clarity to your mind. How often do you breathe mindfully? There's 3 questions. I'll read them in a row, and then you decide which ones you want to answer. How often do you breathe mindfully? How do you allow your breath to bring clarity to your mind? And what happens when you're not breathing with awareness? I know that answer for myself. No.
Yeah, I have started to use breath so much more. I have a good friend of mine that has become has a breath work practice now, and so I'm learning a lot more about breathing as far as helping to regulate my nervous system. Yes. And to focus. I use breathing at night when I wake up in the night and I can't fall back asleep. There's a specific pattern that I use that always helps me fall back asleep.
Which one do you use, Melissa? If you don't mind, do share.
I think it's a Dr. Andrew Weil from him, but will you breathe in for 4 and then you for 4 counts and you hold for 7 and then you exhale for 8.
Yes.
And you do that 4 times. And that's like a magic sleeping pill for me.
Yeah, no, and it's for most people. Yeah, it's a wonderful one. It is from him and it's phenomenal. Having taught yoga for quite a long time, more than a decade, breathing is so important. And I used to tell students that, it's like you're driving down the road and maybe a squirrel jumps out and then, 5 minutes later, you're still not breathing. You're still, and I think so often we don't realize that we haven't really sat and taken a full breath. So I am glad you're doing that. I'm glad that during the night, if you do wake up, that's working for you, because there's nothing worse than losing a good night's sleep, especially when you have so many people looking forward to hearing your voice and your teachings. So, Melissa, you have been so much fun. Really enjoyed getting to know you better and hearing you share so transparently about how you were able to take tragedy and make it an opportunity and really allow that to cause a ripple effect, not only for your life, but for all the people that you touch. So thank you from my heart to yours.
Thank you so much. It's been so great to get to talk with you.
Thank you. So if you are at a point in your life where you're ready to step up and make a bold, brave, and courageous stand, and maybe step into a place where you're making an impact or simply changing the way you're living and being and experiencing this magical world, reach out to me. I'd love to see if we can have a chat and if I can help you further. Till next time, be exquisite.